It's a simple statement to say that students are not robots. People are not robots. People develop at different rates. And that seems like a sensible thing to say and an obvious thing to say. But it's sometimes in education, people forget that students develop their skills at different rates and not everybody follows the same path. And sometimes people's development accelerates at some periods faster than others. Some people take time to find the thing that they excel at, but once they do, they are able to achieve exceptional results and go on to do incredibly interesting things. And that is certainly true of today's guest. My name is Simon Henderson. I am Head of History and Sixth Form at Teasdale School, and this is episode 20 of Made in Teasdale.
Made in Teasdale.
And we actually sat there one night watching John Wayne's Stagecoach film projected onto the wall while looking down at the scene below.
It is absolutely fascinating seeing inner city London children dropped into the middle of a working farm.
I have very fond memories of growing up in Teasdale. I mean, living in the countryside and having, loads of fresh air, loads of space to play.
It really is the case that if you come from County Durham, and in my case have lived in southwest London for 40 years, County Durham's still what I call home.
Made in Teasdale.
My guest today is Helen Hollyman, or Helen Walton, as she was when she was at Teasdale School, where she studied A-levels in English literature, history, and sociology, and she now works for a corporate law firm and is based in Newcastle. Helen, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. It's lovely to see you again after all this time.
Same.
So talk to us first of all about where you grew up in Teasdale and your childhood experiences of growing up in Teasdale.
Okay, so I grew up in Mickleton, which is one of the villages near Barnard Castle. I grew up on a farm. I was fortunate enough to grow up on a farm, so I spent a lot of my childhood sort of around animals, had a horse, pet sheep, which we used to walk across the road on leads, which amused everybody at the bus stop. So yeah, it was definitely a country upbringing, I think. And then obviously as I got older and went to Teasdale School, the focus sort of became trying to get into Barnard Castle and hanging out with my friends. So I used to get the bus into town and hang out with them. So it was just, it was a lovely childhood. I think it's not until you leave the area that you really appreciate how lucky we were growing up there. And you live, when I was at university, I was in Manchester, and living in the inner city is a totally different experience. So yeah, loved my upbringing and really didn't really appreciate it until much later, which is a shame.
So Teasdale School, talk to us about some favourite subjects and some fond memories.
Fond memories, right? Well, I always loved school. I was a massive geek. I really liked school, and I think. I found GCSEs quite difficult because it was such a broad spread of subjects. So I think I found that quite difficult, sort of being good at everything, which is kind of what I tried to be. And I think actually I did better and enjoyed it more when I got to A-levels, and it was narrower subjects. So I did biology, which I have no idea why, because I have absolutely no talent in that area. But I think there was some logic about why I did it. And so I did biology, sociology, history and English, which kind of I felt went quite well together. I think there was probably some guidance from you as well there with that, with those choices. And yeah, I think, and then I dropped biology when I went to A-level. And I think it was just enjoyable. It was more enjoyable when it was subjects that I'd chosen, had an interest in, that sort of went well together. But GCSE was obviously broader subjects and different things to learn about, which is fun. But yeah, I think I did better later on.
I still use you as an example, actually. Still now, like 15 years after or whatever, because you did buck the trend, and I often say to kids that like A-levels are a new start. So you've done your GCSEs and like you park that, and then you start on your A-levels, and you are one of few people who ended up getting much better results in your A levels than you did in your GCSEs. Right? And I think that's what you said about it being a broad spectrum. Once you'd found the subjects that you really enjoyed, then you were able to really excel in those subjects.
Yes.
So I still use you as a girl who I used to teach called Helen. She did this, but then she did that. So yeah, what my memory of you is that you just really enjoyed those subjects, and once you'd found your thing that you really enjoyed, then you were able to really excel in it.
And I think inevitably people have a natural aptitude for certain things. I personally found languages and sort of maths quite difficult. Not difficult. I think I could do them. I was competent, but I wasn't ever going to excel in that area. And I think sometimes it's learning what you are good at and sort of focusing all of your energy into that. And yeah, I think I loved history, and I actually didn't do history at GCSE. I don't know if you remember, but I think I can't remember what subject I'd done with you, but I just thought, actually, I really wish I'd done that, and ended up loving it and doing well, and then went on to do a history degree. So yeah, I mean, in terms of fond memories, the whole of school was fun. Our year in particular was brilliant. When we got up to sixth form, some of the stuff that we did, what was it called? What was the thing we did there?
The entertainment for the
the entertainment and stuff like that. That was just brilliant. It was like the highlight. It really was.
I think you were the Austin Powers group. So the storyline was it was some sort of weird take on an Austin Powers film, and Mr. Griffiths, the head of sixth form at the time, he was supposed to be the Austin Powers character, and I was played. I can't remember the boy that played me, but I was the villain, and the whole plot. The whole plot was that I was trying to steal Mr. Griffith's tash because that was the source of all of his power. And I remember that was a great fun. So you mentioned your A levels, and you said a history degree. Talk to us about what you did at Manchester and what you enjoyed about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I sort of dived into uni really. I didn't think about it too much, but going from a small village where you basically know everybody, you've known everybody all your whole life, and then even when you go into school like Teasdale, we're lucky it's quite a small school in comparison to some comprehensives. So you still know, or broadly, know of most of the people in that school. So to go from that to being a tiny, tiny speck in this huge organisation and people from all over, I loved it. It was the first day I can remember my mum dropped me off with my auntie, and I was in the halls, and I can remember sitting on the bed thinking, oh gosh, what have I done? Like, I don't know this area, I don't know anybody, this is going to be overwhelming. And then my auntie just sort of went down the corridor saying, I've got really expensive ice cream if anybody wants to be Helen's friend, being completely embarrassing. It was awful, but it sort of brought people out, and then you got chatting, and it's the best thing I've ever done. I can't speak about it enough. Not just the academics and the learning, it's the skills that you pick up and the people that you meet, and that sounds really sort of trite, but it's true. It's within a week, my dearest friends were people that had totally different upbringings to me, or different experiences, and that led on to sort of going on their boat for a holiday, or different things that I wouldn't necessarily have had the opportunity to do. And then obviously just life skills, cooking for yourself, washing for yourself, managing your bills, all of that's really important before you get to grown-up life. But the history degree itself was brilliant. You went from, obviously, a lot of assisted learning. Teaching at school is very direct. You get your hand held, they point you in the direction. You were suddenly dropped into, especially with history degree, which was 5 hours teaching time a week, and the rest of it was self-learning. So you learn to be self-motivated, which I quite enjoy. I liked that element of control and working it all out and driving myself. I think some people might find that a bit difficult, the jump between the ways of learning, but I quite liked it, and it set me up really well for my job, because a lot of this is self, and law degree, self-motivating. You have to do it all yourself because nobody's going to help you. So that was great. But yeah, it's just brilliant. I can't recommend uni enough. The only thing I would say is probably on reflection, I did history because I thought, and I think again it was either a discussion with you or Mrs. Ellis, it said, do something that you are going to do well in or that plays to your skill set. And I picked history for that reason, that I thought it'd be something I would be good at. And I think looking back now, because of the cost of studying, I probably would have gone into law. I probably should have decided law at that stage to save myself a lot of money. But it doesn't take away from how much I enjoyed that. I loved it.
Did you do a law conversion?
I did. Yeah, I did. And I did it sort of privately, wasn't funded by a firm, and it was fortunate enough I could do that. But it's a lot of money and it's a lot of commitment, and when you don't have a training contract at that time, it's quite a daunting step. Whereas if I'd done a law course originally as my degree, I would have had that sort of in my pocket, and if I wanted to do something else. So I think maybe just, if you have all the money in the world, it doesn't really matter. But I think sometimes I probably would have thought about the vocational element a bit more on reflection, I think, because when you start getting to the end of uni, it's quite intimidating when you have to start thinking about, right, what am I going to do for the rest of my life?
So talk to us about the firm that you work for now and what sort of law you're involved in and what you do.
I'm involved in the least sexy area of law, if I'm honest. So I trained at a regional firm in Newcastle. Actually, I did. My uncle got me on some VAC schemes with some barristers, because I needed to work out whether I wanted to go to the bar or work as a solicitor. And I did some work experience in the Crown Court, and some of the cases were a bit scary, and I think actually that's not for me. I think I'll be better dealing with people in suits. So I went into commercial law, and so I trained at a regional firm in Newcastle, which was and I basically chose that firm because I really liked the sort of the ethos and the mentality and the culture, and I think that comes from sort of Teasdale School and the closeness that you have and the culture that you have there. It's important to me, and that was reflected in my career choices as well. So trained there, and then got an opportunity to work on qualification at DWF, which is an international law firm. And I had my interview with my current boss, and just knew instantly I wanted to work for him. Just thought, yeah, that's the guy I want to work for. Joined, and then within 5 years, I think I'm coming 5 or 6 years qualified. I've just done all sorts of things, been involved in really big projects. And the good thing about the law now is that a lot of firms, despite being previously city-based, London-based, are outsourcing a lot of their work and their big projects that they win to the regional offices, but it's cheaper, essentially. But it means that you're exposed to really big, impressive, important deals, which is just great experience and more fun to a certain extent. So yeah, and DWF has a global reach now, which is exciting. So it's good to be part of something, but again, it's daunting being a small part in a huge machine. A bit like uni, going from being in Muckle in the regional, where you sat next to your equity partners and you have impact and influence direct. This is obviously a little bit more removed, so you just have to be a little bit more determined in making your point in an organisation of this size.
So given that this is a podcast, our listeners can't see that you're sitting with your Britney Spears headset on, and you've got your sort of corporate blanked out background in your office, and your PA's just made you a cup of tea and all that sort of stuff. And
I mean, that's not true. She didn't do that.
And you said to me before we started recording this that you just checked your emails from yesterday, and then you wanted to put your head in the oven. So what sort of what's a day in the life of Helen Hollyman? What sort of stuff are you working on?
So I work in commercial property, so real estate, and at the moment I tend to do a lot of London sort of fund transactions. So we buy and sell a lot of shopping centres, and we do regeneration schemes so I do a bit of national and a bit of local. So I do I'm involved in quite a lot of regeneration schemes locally, so development, buying sites, doing all that due diligence, and then entering into agreements with various tenants that want to take the site, development agreements with the people that are going to develop it out. So yeah, it's I think the main thing is it's high pressured. It's high pressured because of the nature of just business. Generally, people want to make money and they need things doing quickly, but I kind of thrive off that a lot. Sometimes it gets a little too much, but generally what drives me is ticking things off, getting things done, achieving it. And there's the genuinely the feeling when you've completed a really difficult deal is great. When I was a trainee, we were involved in floating a local company on the stock exchange, and the process that you have to go through to do that is incredibly intense. And basically, people didn't sleep for days. It was a bit like Suits, and that's the only element. It was like Suits, and being a part of that at the end, whilst it was difficult, it gave me a lot of skills that I've been able to replicate now when I'm running transactions. And I think getting to the end of that and seeing what we'd achieved, and even nicer for a local business, was amazing. So that's kind of where I get but a lot of the skills that I draw upon now have come from things that I had to learn from sort of school in the latter years and university, organisation, critical analysis, problem solving, all of those things. And I think when you talk about them sort of at A levels and things in the abstract, it doesn't mean much. But now I look back and think I actually couldn't do what I do without having developed those skills. So basically I log on quite early, deal with emails that have come in overnight. A lot of because of the change in the ways that people are working, people with children tend to work on the evenings. So it means all the work that you've done in the day is superseded by those people that work on the night. And so get through those emails, and then it depends really if I have loads of meetings in to discuss projects or clients or progress things or argue with the other side about documents, or alternatively I'll actually sit down and have to do the law and the work and then go drafting the documents, negotiate the documents. So some days it's firefighting and survival, and then other days it's feeling good about what you've managed to do, and still learning stuff as well, which is it's good. And again, that sounds really trite, but sometimes you get asked a really technical point of law that doesn't necessarily come up that often, and I really love sitting and thinking about it and making up a document or something to reflect that. So yeah, I wish it sounded more. I wish it was more glamorous.
It sounds the Suits reference. There you go. That's very glamorous.
Yeah.
So probably it's fair to say that sort of lawyers and solicitors get a bit of a bad name because, especially they're taking forever to do it. It's just they can charge us an extra like £10 a minute for whatever they're doing.
I really resent that.
Do you get a lot of sort of people being a bit irate with you and saying, "Why have you taken so long to do this?"
But I think that tends to be from people who are users for sort of residential, or I don't do residential. And people that use you for business purposes and for business law understand the nature of the game. And a lot of the time we get emails from people saying, thank you so much, you've gone above and beyond, because they appreciate the hour. I work harder in terms of hours spent than my husband, who's a medic. So I always resent the fact that people sort of say, oh, you're only after the money. For what we do, we aren't paid enough, to be quite honest, in terms of our fees. But I think it's different when it's sort of resi and it's on an individual level, because you're personally invested, you want that house, or you're dealing with probate or something difficult. There's an element where you don't really understand the mechanics of what needs to happen. So I think, I can understand that frustration. But it's funny, even my dad says it, and I look at my dad and think, you've had loads of free legal work, love. You need to calm down. I understand that on a personal, individual level, but usually businesses and business people who use professional service firms understand. And we actually, there's other professions that I think get away with a lot more than we do. I think we're held to quite a high standard and worked quite hard.
Do you get a lot of friends and family saying, Helen, can you look at this contract?
It's amazing how many people ask me about parking tickets. And I think I've got no idea. I don't do criminal. And also, also just pay the ticket. It's like £15. Like, it's not really worth. And my husband's the worst for it, actually. He's he got overexcited once, having watched a documentary where I think it was about a barrister, and he suddenly decided that he could be a barrister. So he wrote a letter to contest his parking ticket. It was this really funny sort of somebody who has got no idea about the law, basically saying to his Your Honour or something like this. It started off, Your Honour, if it doth please you, or something like this. And I was like, there's absolutely no way any judge is going to see this.
It's going to be someone sitting in a council office. It's someone sitting in a council office taking your money.
Going, what a waste of time this guy spent. So it is funny, and I always, it's difficult because I think, a bit like my husband always says about people that ask him random questions about their health, he always says that's not my area of expertise. And I can sort of say the same. I can probably give you a broad idea of something that I don't do. Probate or something, but generally, if you want advice, you're best paying the people that do it all the time.
Same with historians. That's not my period. Sorry, that's not my specialist area.
Did you find though, people always say to you, like when you say you do a history degree, or presumably you get it a lot more as well. People always say, "Oh, who was?" and then this really obscure question.
Yeah.
And I always say, I didn't study the whole of history.
Yeah, it's quite a big field, really. It's quite a big thing. So you talked about, and I remember when you were a student, you were very meticulous, and you like to have lots of like different coloured pens, and you like to make your notes to be really very. And the notes were like absolutely pristine. In fact, they're probably in a museum somewhere. They should be.
Notes. You would have been proud. I actually felt proud of them after law school, because the law school exams were basically on the GDL, the conversion course. You did, I think you did like 10 or 11 exams in 2 weeks. So some days you'd have an exam in the morning and then another one in the afternoon. And I had reams of this A3 paper with like colour. It was fabulous. I look back now and feel really proud. I get them out sometimes when I don't know the answer to something. Yeah. And I think, wow, that was amazing. But yeah, you have to be in law. It's a detailed orientated practice area. Yeah, that's what it is.
And we're speaking at before 8 o'clock in the morning, and you're ready and you've checked your emails already, and you told me that you work till about 8 o'clock at night most times. That's quite a long day. You said that you work probably more intensely than your husband, who's actually a surgeon. So what do you do to switch off, and how do you, especially as you've probably been working from home a decent bit, like lots of people, how do you kind of separate and like switch off the fact that I'm not working anymore?
It's the hardest thing that I've personally found. I really needed the distinction. When you work the hours that we do, you need the distinction between home life and work life. So when you left the office, you turned off your computer. Largely, that was you done until you chose to log on. Whereas that isn't happening at home, obviously. And you've got, we live in a flat, and there isn't a lot of space for me to sort of, okay, I can shut that door and that not be a part of my life. So it's difficult. I think it's difficult, and I have to be honest, and I want to say something really sort of inspiring and intelligent, but I just watch trash TV. So I do a lot, to be fair, I do a lot of home workouts. So I usually do that after I log off with my friends. We do a home workout, and then I just sit and watch rubbish TV. And my dad always used to say to me when I was younger and studying, he always used to say to me, I can't believe you watch this rubbish. I cannot believe somebody that's as intelligent as you watches this rubbish. And I used to say to him, Dad, that's the point. That's the point, that it's something that my brain doesn't have to think. I can just sit and mindlessly watch whatever it is. I do also love to read crime dramas. Love them, but don't often get the chance, because the nature of my job is that I read a lot, and sometimes facing a book at the end of the day is a bit.
So what's your top trashy TV pick at the moment?
I can't tell you, because it's really bad. It's pretty bad. It's the Real Housewives of virtually anywhere. Right. I'm not picky. I'll watch it wherever. New Jersey tends to be my favourite, but yeah, it's terrible. I don't like to admit that, and I would really like this to be cut out of the podcast.
But you're right. It's just about it's sort of switching off, isn't it? It's about just chilling out and doing something different.
It's knowing who you are, I think, as well. I know how I work, and I know I need that downtime. My husband doesn't. He's sort of an overachiever generally by nature. He's bordering on manic at all times, just in his personality, so he can keep going constantly. I think it's the nature of working night shifts as well. Like they don't need sleep as much, so he broadly can keep going and it doesn't affect him, whereas I definitely get worn down and get a bit overwhelmed. So I know I need that downtime, and I make it a priority, to be honest.
So talk to we'll I think we will leave the Real Housewives of New Jersey in. It's a good recommendation. People need to get out there and see this stuff. Give us a crime novel recommendation.
Basically just any of the Jack Reacher books. I love them, absolutely love them. Read them all. And it's quite nice actually, because Mum and I share them. So if she gets a new one, she gives it to me and I give her it back. So yeah, just love them. Again, I think it's the problem solving bit. I like it.
Yeah. And how often do I know you're in Newcastle and you're working a lot. How often, sort of pre-pandemic, do you manage to get back to see Mum and sisters and Dad and Teasdale?
very regularly. I think it's funny because when I talk about my childhood to people at work, I think they think I'm landed gentry, because and I think they think that we own, I think they think we're Lord Barnard basically. But I have to say to them, no, it's just the nature of our upbringing is, my dad goes shooting. We have we had horses. It's just how it is in the countryside. It's not overly special. But I go back regularly. I feel like I get to a certain point in the A1 and I can feel all of the stress and fast living of my job and life sort of disappear, and it's great. And I have to be honest, I don't think I could do it full time. I get used to everything being immediately available and Deliveroo, etc. But it's definitely a priority. I've got 2 nieces who are amazing, and I just love them to death. And so yeah, seeing them's really important. And I go home, I would say sort of definitely once a month. And my husband's not from the countryside, so when he goes, he's like, he had a bit of a fit when he was exposed to midges for the first time, and then settled down. And we did take him to the farm, and he constantly asked, "Is this a cow? Is this a real cow?" I mean, he's not. I don't know why he lived in sort of Ponteland, so he will have seen cows, but for some reason he's never seen one up close. So yeah, it's hugely important to me. I love going back and make it a regular thing because it's a different way of life, and it's a good way of life, I think.
Well, my abiding memory of you is on AS level results day. So that's probably going to be like, I don't know, 2003, 2004 or something like that. And I think you possibly had dressed for like the fact that it was August, but it was absolutely tipping it down. So I remember being excited because I'd seen the results on that morning and I knew that you had like an A off the charts in your AS level history. And so I was really excited for you to see that you'd got that. But you were just like distraught that your hair was saturated because it was tipping it down, and that you were soaking wet, and that your makeup was possibly going to be running. And then I remember you opened your envelope, saw how well you'd done, and then started crying. So your mascara was running everywhere, all over the place, everywhere. It's really nice, and I think it's really important for students, young people who are listening to this, to see that you did say at the start that you needed to find what it was that like you were really passionate about, and I think possibly the reason why you were so emotional that day, not just because your hair was wet and it was tipping it down, was because I think in some ways you might have almost surprised yourself at how well you'd done, and I think it's really inspiring, hopefully, for people who are listening to this, and it's really nice for me to hear as someone who used to teach you, and I know teachers who will be listening to this who used to teach you as well, to see that you did find that, and then you've kind of flown from there, and you've done some really interesting things, and you're doing a really, really interesting and exciting job.
Yeah, I think, well, that's kind, and I think it's definitely true. I think sometimes you don't realise all of the options that are available to you, and what you can achieve, and I think it's useful to have teachers like you who sort of can show you that and say, oh, have you thought about this, have you thought about that? And when you get out there, you realize even more what you could do, and yeah, I think sometimes when you're stuck in school and it's 9 to 5? I don't even know what the hours are actually.
So it's sort of like 20 to 9 to 3 o'clock now.
So, oh God, I'd love that sort of day. You don't really think outside that because you're just sort of getting through each day, and actually half of it is just is buckling down and doing your best and seeing what you can do with that, I think.
I think that's good advice, to buckle down, do your best, and see where it takes you. Well, thanks very much, Helen. It has been a delight.
You too. Thanks.
So Helen is very much an example of somebody who found exactly what she was interested in and what she excelled in, and then she worked really hard and achieved some incredible results, and that is how she has got to where she is now. So the moral of her story is, if you don't know exactly what you want to do when you're 14, 15 or 16, if you don't find that thing straight away that you are really good at, keep trying, persevere, and you will find it. And once you apply yourself to the thing that you really enjoy and that you are talented in, then you can go really far. If you would like to share your story with the listeners of Made in Teasdale, or you know someone who you think has an interesting story and you would like to volunteer them to appear on Made in Teasdale, then please do get in touch. Until next time, stay safe, take care, goodbye.